Excellencies, dear friends, a very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us at this very important side event. Thank you for bearing with us on day 3, and we know that you have your choice of side events, so thank you to all of you who are joining us in person, and a warm welcome to all of those who are joining online via Zoom. Today we're at this session discussing the digital gender divide, prevention, regulation and empowerment. So I'm P.O. Smith, I'm the Regional Director for UNFPA based here in Bangkok, and I'm very pleased to be moderating today's important conversation. I want to begin with a special thank you to our friends at Australia's E-Safety Commissioner and also the ARC Centre of Excellence for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, CEVA, for helping us to co-host this session. Your collaboration makes the difference. Allow me, if you don't mind, just to share some framing remarks for our discussions this afternoon, everyone. So today, of course, we're going to focus on the unique ways in which technology affects women and girls. And of course, we all know technology holds immense potential. It can be a powerful tool for empowerment. However, sadly, it also brings new risks and deepens existing inequalities. By examining the rise of technology through a gendered lens, we gain a clearer understanding of the challenges that face women and girls, and also how we collectively can leverage technology to advance gender equality and promote sustainable development. The internet, of course, offers unprecedented opportunities for connection, education, and economic participation, yet it also brings with it a darker side. Technology-facilitated GBV. A report by the Economist Intelligence Unit reveals a staggering 85% of women globally have either witnessed or experienced TFGBV. Here in Asia Pacific, a study by UNFPA and the University of Melbourne additionally shed light on the disproportionate targeting of women, girls, and LGBTIQ+ individuals. So it really is a wake-up call, a clarion call for urgent action from all of us to build a very more inclusive and safer digital future. We have to ensure that every woman and girl can navigate the digital world with confidence, free from harm. Technology should be used to serve as a bridge for opportunity, security, and equality, not as a barrier. And the solutions to these challenges are, of course, within our reach. A safer, more resilient digital world is possible. It's possible if we have our governments, civil society, and private sector coming together to help be focused on our survivors, to create a survivor-centered support system. Laws must provide safety both online and offline, with clear reporting mechanisms and legal protections for all individuals. Additionally, we must engage young people, empower communities, and transform the harmful gender norms that fuel both digital and real-world violence. Investing in education, research, evidence-based policies will be crucial in terms of creating safer digital spaces. Equipping women and girls with that digital literacy is also essential, not only to safely navigate the online world, but also to challenge harmful stereotypes and to enable full participation in the digital sphere. Tech companies also have a critical role to play in this fight. They must continue some of the initial steps that they're taking. Platforms must adopt ethical guidelines and safety by design principles to ensure a secure online environment. These are just a few of the steps that we must take, because we cannot accept another layer of discrimination against women and girls that presents itself in the form of technology-facilitated GBV. And so we're very fortunate, everyone, to be joined by an esteemed group of panelists, each demonstrating exceptional leadership in advocating for gender equality and addressing TFGBV. Their insights will be very vital in terms of helping us shape some of the solutions that we need for our region. So it is my privilege to introduce the Honourable Linda Tabuya, Minister for Women of Fiji, Her Excellency Stephanie Coppis-Campbell, Australia's Ambassador for Gender Equality, Ms. Taranima Prabhakar, Co-founder and Research Lead for TATL, and Professor Sarah Davies, Deputy Director, Indo-Pacific Research at CEVA at Griffith University. All powerful advocates in their own way, and thank you to all 4 of you for being with us this afternoon. I'd like to mention, colleagues, as well, this session is being live streamed on YouTube to ensure that we have wider access. Also, we are inviting our online colleagues to contribute to a virtual Big Idea Wall where they can share their own ideas as we continue our discussions. I also just want to say that, today's discussion might touch on some very sensitive, raw topics for some people in this room. And of course, we want to acknowledge that and encourage anyone who feels the need to seek support or to perhaps leave the room. That is, of course, completely fine, and we encourage it. So with that, I'm pleased to turn to our esteemed panelists, beginning with Minister Linda Tabuya. So, Minister, firstly, let me commend your government for adopting its first national action plan on preventing violence against women and girls. That plan highlighted the need for a comprehensive approach to addressing the risks of online and technology-facilitated violence in protecting women and children. And as part of it, could you share how Fiji is working to prevent the risks of online harm, and also how you have engaged various stakeholders to ensure that multi-sectoral, multi-dimensional approach?
Thank you, Pio. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be part of this panel today. And allow me to begin by thanking the organizers. Thank you, UNFPA. Thank you to the Australia's E-Safety Commission. More importantly, my dear friend Stephanie Copus-Campbell, Australia's Gender Equality Ambassador, and her leadership in prioritizing and bringing attention to this critical issue of TFGBV, both regionally and globally, is truly commendable. As we mark the 30th anniversary of Beijing Declaration, and our lives increasingly straddle the online and offline worlds, this discussion couldn't be more timely, critical, or relevant. In the digital age, as we've heard, technology offers undeniable benefits. It connects us, it drives innovation, and democratizes access to information. Yet, there are also new avenues for abuse and exploitation. Fiji, like many countries, we are experiencing a rapid rise in digital connectivity. At the start of this year, 2024, 541,000 users aged 18 and above were active on social media. This represents 86.7% of the adult population. Additionally, there were 1.19 million active cellular mobile connections, equivalent to 126% of the total population. This underscores the prevalence, of course, of mobile technology, and I'm sure you have the similar experiences in your countries. Furthermore, 67% of Fiji's total internet usage base, regardless of age, engages with at least one social media platform as of January this year. But of course, one of the most pressing vulnerabilities is TFGBV in Fiji. The data from the Fiji's Online Safety Commission indicates that 61% of women who reported abuse experiencing TFGBV compared to 38% of men. And this is very much in line with the prevalence of offline violence as well. The numbers add up, match up. 64% of women face violence in their lifetimes. Now, while this comprehensive data is limited on TFGBV, further reports from the Online Safety Commission highlight social media platforms, particularly Facebook, most reported platform for abuse. Image-based abuse is 22%, defamatory comments 30%. It illustrates the gendered nature of this issue. As a woman leader myself who has repeatedly faced harassment and technology-facilitated gender-based violence, I understand the unique pressures and dangers that such abuse can inflict on women and girls in all their diversity. And I share this as a mother. I may have been strong enough to deal with it, but dealing with a child who went through self-harm and attempted suicide because of it, the threats are real to us as women leaders. My apologies. Fiji is committed to tackling this issue through the effective implementation of our National Action Plan, as mentioned by Pio. This signifies our national resolve to prevent gender-based violence before it starts, including TFGBV. I'm pleased to highlight that in December 2023, we conducted a deep dive online safety workshop, collaborating with our key stakeholders in GBV service providers. A critical gap came to light: the limitations within our laws to review, and the review of the Online Safety Act was a crucial step. So this year, our ministry, with UNFPA as the lead technical support for implementing our National Action Plan to prevent gender-based violence, initiated a rapid gender analysis of our Online Safety Act. I'm thrilled to announce that this important gender analysis will officially be launched next month as part of 16 days of activism. This milestone will be marked by a dedicated session with parliamentarians at a retreat attended by our Prime Minister, underscoring our commitment to fostering a safer online safety environment. Colleagues, the gender analysis outlined 4 key areas for consideration. 1, establishing a clear definition for technology-facilitated gender-based violence to ensure comprehensive and targeted legislative responses. 2, defining harmful or abusive content more comprehensively, alongside enhancing the Online Safety Commission's powers to remove such content and empower users to avoid exposure. 3, developing industry standards. We have to hold the industry to account to regulate harmful online content and mitigate illegal harm, including risks such as sexual exploitation of women and children and the misuse of AI. And 4, adding provisions for data and reporting requirements to monitor how effectively the Act addresses technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Looking ahead, the review of the Online Safety Act is expected to feature on the Parliament's agenda for 2025, signaling a critical step forward in strengthening Fiji's legislative framework. We recognize that legislation is only one pillar of the solution. To achieve meaningful progress, effectively implementing this revised Online Safety Act must be supported by adequate human and financial resources for the Online Safety Commission and law enforcement agencies. Of course, equally important is raising awareness and educational campaigns and the need for behavioral change to tackle violence before it begins. Of course, the journey ahead has its challenges, and I was very fortunate to be speaking with a few women just outside of the room before coming in here. And as we shared our experiences, feel a sense of heaviness as you share this, for what we are now facing in the 21st century and this emerging issue. But there is hope, and we need to inspire each other, and we need to be the agents of change. We need to continue this momentum for transformative change, and I know only together, as we collaborate and we innovate, that we can work towards a digital world that is safer and empowering for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you for sharing those personal and insightful reflections. But I think also more broadly, thank you for your exceptional leadership. It really makes a difference when we have leaders like you in position, and also for shedding light in terms of the Pacific and how we can address it in a tailored way for some of our countries there, and also for touching on this issue of the public policy space where there are direct attacks on women and their families to try and neutralize that voice in a very perverse way. So we need continued fearless advocates like you. So thank you so much for that and for giving us hope and inspiration. Let me turn to another fearless advocate, our good friend Stephanie. Australia has been a leader in addressing GBV across the entire region, and as part of these broader efforts, Australia, with your personal engagement, has become a true thought leader in tackling TFGBV. Thank you for that leadership and that dedication to this critical issue. But maybe, Ambassador, if I can ask you, as part of these efforts, TFGBV safety by design has become a central focus, encouraging tech companies to integrate risk mitigation strategies from the very start and to actually embed user protections from the outset. So can you please share with us why this safety by design piece is really essential in the prevention work, and also what successes and challenges do you see?
Thanks. And Can I just say what a privilege it is to share the stage with such important people, but my dear friend and colleague, can I say you have really just made such a substantial difference in this space with your leadership and what you bring forward as a powerful leader and a survivor together. I've seen it in action. Just recently at RMI, when we had the ministerial conference, you put it on the regional agenda in a way that no one else could. So do know it has been so hard for you, but you represent so many others and you give so much inspiration to others, but your ability to use that experience and drive change just must be commended. So thank you. So in answering your question, just imagine I'm walking down the street, minding my own business, and someone comes up to me and he starts in, "You whore, you horrible person. Did you sleep your way to the top? You deserve to die. You're a sorceress. You're a witch." He would be arrested for harassment. That you can't do that when you're walking in the street. Yet the space that I socialize, learn, work, bank, educate, network, not only can he do it, but millions of people can do it all at once. And there's very little repercussion. And what this does is it squeezes me out of this space. That digital divide, which is so important for empowering me as a woman, for ensuring I'm educated and I can network and get information and do my banking and run my business, I get squeezed out of it. Not to mention that if I am a woman in a public space, and boy, if you've taken one thing away from this conference, we need women at the table. But this is actively, disproportionately pushing women out of public spaces. So I'll get to your point in a minute, but I also just want to give voice because I've had the privilege now of traveling all throughout the world, of meeting so many incredible leaders, so many incredible women, and hearing their story. And let me share some of those voices. I've heard of women who, because of what has happened to them online, have gone home and experienced terrible domestic violence because their partners, even knowing it's not true, were embarrassed and they were beaten up at home as a result. I've heard of women, and we just heard now, who've had terrible challenges with their children, who see this happening to their mothers online. I heard of one woman after I gave a talk in New York, she came up afterwards and shared her story that there were days at a time she couldn't get out of bed because in posting something, just the terrible things that were said about her. And this one woman said to me, and so many others, but I just will always remember that, she said, "It wasn't until I heard you speak that I knew, A, this was wrong, I didn't have to put up with it, and there were others out there experiencing it." And again, so many women think this is part of what women just have to put up with being in the public space or being online. And the burden is on them. Be resilient, ignore it, laugh it off. But as we've heard, it has terrible repercussions, not only in terms of people's mental health, but again, their livelihoods and their ability to participate. So in all of this, we have to park the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff because until we have these mechanisms in place, we're going to have to support people. We do. But we have to also equally park it at the top of the cliff and to do everything we can to stop it in the first place. And that is where safety by design is critical. And it's a responsibility of tech companies to make their product as safe as possible so that when I use it, I'll have those protections through a systemic approach and it doesn't come back to me to put up with it. And I know that our e-safety commissioner and others have been working tirelessly to look at how we engage with tech companies in terms of safety by design. And I think that's one area where we are making some progress in that we are defining what needs to happen. We are engaging and we are providing solutions. And also, I think, just the fact that we are now coming around the table, the more people talking about it and realizing that I need to be able to walk down any street, be it literally or virtually, in a safe way. So there's more recognition and there's more identification of what we need to do. There's lots of challenges, but let me just note two. One, all of this is happening in the space of global pushback against gender equality, and it is also part of the playbook of the anti-rights movement. If you target, for example, women in public spaces, you're getting rid of kind of that really powerful group that might challenge you, for example. And so as we even look over the last few months and things that have happened globally, I think the space in terms of maybe some of the permissive environment for tech companies may have become even harder. So what we're up against in terms of that anti-rights movement, this sits in the center, and our ability to have a voice and to push back, as well as the way in which we're targeted, is in a very complex setting. And I think the second thing is technology, it changes every single day. I mean, I was in New York recently, went into the Apple shop, and they handed me these goggles to put on. I'm in a whole new world, and all I'm thinking about is, my goodness, how is this going to be used against women, right? And so our ability to stay on top of it in terms of regulation, in terms of education, in terms of prevention, is challenging every single day. And again, it's why we need to continue to invest in the research, in the mechanisms, in the learning, in organizations like our wonderful e-safety commissioner, and that team to continue to ensure this is on the agenda and we are out in front of it. So again, in this, we need to continue to park that ambulance at the top of the cliff. But until then, and I have to say, again, traveling around the world, one of the things I've really noticed is we comprehensively lack support mechanisms for survivors. And so we need to double our efforts to ensure that we can ensure women are safe in the public, ensure that they can participate in all the wonderful things about technology, ensure that they can do things like use social media and do online banking without worrying about a perpetrator tracking them. That's also really, really important. And I think the last thing, to ensure that they have access to the right information and not disinformation, which I think is another form of violence against women, when you're told things like, birth control is going to make your hair turn blue and your teeth fall out, disinformation, that we also in that space have access to the right information. Thank you.
Thanks, Ambassador. Thank you for being so frank, because, now is not the time to push around diplomatic words, actually. I think there is a real and present danger, particularly for the rights of women and girls, and it has become and is becoming increasingly obvious, and we have to be very clear-eyed about that. But I also want to commend, Ambassador, your dedication and focus in these public arenas to the survivor. Because that's also ultimately what those women and girls need, is to know that their voice is being heard and respected, and that we are thinking about putting in place and trying to put in place measures that ultimately provide that support to them. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. Let me turn to you, Taranima, now. Thank you for being with us today. So, of course, a lot of this conversation is looking at the misuse and the harms that have been caused by technology, but of course there is that opportunity for positive change. And I've been saying this week also, I've been saying, yes, we have had a lot of advancements over the last 30 years, but let's be clear-eyed in terms of where things are at in that permissive environment that Stephanie just spoke about. But it is important to look at the successes to also help with some of that hope and the support that both our previous speakers spoke about. So based on your research, Taranima, and your experience, could you please share some insights on any TF benefits, examples of how technology is helping to address gender inequality and bridge that digital divide, and perhaps also how it's being used to respond to the GBV piece?
Thanks so much, Pio. I have to say, this is such an honor to be on this table with Minister Tabuya and Ambassador Copus Campbell and Professor Sarah Davies. So thank you so much. So Yeah, I think as a policy wonk, I think a lot about the impact that digital technologies have on our social economic processes, in particular how they affect access and opportunity for gender minorities. There was optimism in the early 2000s with the advent of mobile phones and the internet, and I think the track record from the last decade is in fact quite dismal. I think for the most part, we would say that our digital technologies have not served us or have not served the interests of the most vulnerable in our societies. But as a technologist, I go to work each day thinking about how technology can bring equity, not just equality, but equity. Because at its essence, technology is about shifting power. And yes, it shifts power to corporates, it shifts powers and entrenches existing inequities, but it also shifts power and can shift power when intentionally and designed with care. It can actually shift power towards survivors, and it can shift power to the ones who are most marginalized. Since 2021, we've been working with activists, survivors of online gender-based violence, and through focus group discussions as well as interviews, in-depth conversations, we've tried to understand what their experiences of online gender-based violence is, and what are their unmet needs. And some of the things we've heard is that people want to archive the content, they want to archive instances of abuse because that lets them build the case to governments, to law enforcement. As Ambassador Copus Campbell mentioned, one of the very resounding experiences is of feeling alone when you are attacked. And these are the kind of challenges that technology is actually very well placed to address. When someone is as the word was described, was like, how do I invoke my networks when I am feeling attacked, when I am being attacked, to actually respond to online gender-based violence. And these are the kind of things that actually, when you have, in many cases, people have found their networks and their communities online because they haven't been able to find it in their physical environments. And how do you actually amplify that effect? How do you amplify the connection with communities that will get your back, that will actually come to your aid, that will maybe in person show up and go to law enforcement and advocate for your rights? These are all things that technology is actually very well placed to do when it is designed with intention and care. I think we have generally, when we have worked with organizations and CSOs, we've been really struck by the level of initiative and gumption that we see, and the deep desire to engage with technology as well in amplifying their own work. Just a month ago, we had an event in Bangkok where we saw a number of CSOs talk about the helplines they were running as service providers, where a lot of timely information around whether it is mental health support, legal support, could be provided in remote geographies, even when their immediate communities might not have that information. We've also heard of really interesting instances with chatbots being used to provide information in accessible ways in languages that people understand. Chen, for example, has a chatbot that's integrated into Bumble, and so if you encounter abuse or have had an unpleasant experience on a dating site, it's a bot that you can interact with to access timely information. But I think the other bit is that with technology in general, with the advent of digital technologies, we're also able to see people engage, and gender minorities, women and gender minorities engage with sort of engineering processes in the way that they couldn't. Something that came about during the pandemic was that the labor force participation, women in the labor force, was at a record high because the flexible work environment, the sort of ability to manage domestic care with actually work in the industry was possible. And while social norms should change, often technology is enabling us to meet people where they are within their social norms and give them opportunities. Code to Inspire in Afghanistan is training women with sort of advanced computing skills, and this was a program that was available to women that they could access at their homes, even as the Taliban had closed off public spaces for women. I'm not saying that that is, we have to be fighting social norms and changing social norms as well, but in so many ways, digital technologies have enabled people to access opportunities, have enabled women to access educational opportunities, and as Ambassador Copus Campbell was saying, employment opportunities as well. I think in all of this, something that I have mentioned earlier is this aspect of designing with intention and care, which brings me to the point of how important actually women are as a part of this process of designing with intention and care. In 2012, Harvey Mudd University, which is a campus in the United States, was struggling with increasing the participation of women in its STEM programs. And something that they realized while they were trying to understand how people engage with STEM was to say that oftentimes women cared more about why they were building the technology and not just the how of the engineering process, right? And this is something that I think is very crucial, that for a lot of women, we actually care about designing with intention and care. We care about why we're engaging with technology. And this is something that's reflected in this room. It's something that's reflected in trust and safety companies at platforms. Often, getting women involved with technology is actually helping everyone build safer platforms. It's not just helping, or it's not just making the world safer for women. I think in general, it is leading to better products universally. So yeah, I think I'm going to pause by saying that in many ways, getting all of us, getting women involved in the technical process, which they anyways do. When they come into these processes, when you look at the CSOs, everyone is engaging with technology with a lot of desire to do better, to actually use it for reducing inequities for their own identity group, but also more systemic inequities. And I think all in all, engaging them and getting all of us involved leads to a better digital outcome and a better digital society for everyone. So I'll pause at that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Taranima, for those insights. Couldn't agree more with you on the equity piece. My staff are sick and tired of hearing me say gender equity is where the fight is at, actually, I think. And especially when it comes to, this idea of design with intentionality. Because when we have women involved in the design, in technology, at those leadership and design and board tables, then ultimately you get better outcomes designed for women, designed with women in mind. It's so simple in so many respects, and yet such a hard fight to get there. And I think part of it is also how do we connect with our teenage girls so that we don't lose them in terms of that interest in STEM at such a formative age. And so I think also having this multi-sectoral approach with education systems is so fundamental to the work as well. Thank you for that, Taranima. Let me turn, last but not least, to Sarah. Professor Sarah, thank you for joining us. And of course, we know that evidence is critical. What we don't measure doesn't exist. So as Deputy Director of the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, can you please share with us some of the current evidence on TFGBV here in this region, Asia Pacific, and a little bit on how you're planning to support future work in this field? Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Theo, and I'd like to sincerely thank the Honourable Minister, Her Excellency the Ambassador Taranima, for really powerful speeches that you've just given about those personal experiences of the importance as well of understanding and identifying the way forward in an environment where technology, as everyone has said, is actually a conduit to empowerment, but it also can be a space where it can create immense vulnerability and harm. So the Australian Centre of Excellence, the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, is a 7-year funded centre that has been supported by the Australian Research Council. And eliminating violence against women is the challenge, one of the major challenges for the 21st century. And what the centre aims to do is to transform our understanding of the problem by examining the structural drivers that cause and compound violence against women and pioneer new evidence-based approaches to radically improve policy and practice across Australia and the Indo-Pacific. The centre is ambitious. Our dream is to be able to make sure that we can collectively across the region elevate the policy, the practice, the experience into global research communities to make sure that we can say that in 7 years' time we have a region that is at the forefront of approaching innovative evidence-based approaches to violence against women, including approaching technology-facilitated gender-based violence. We have 13 chief investigators, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of one chief investigator, Professor Asher Flynn, who is leading our work stream on CVOR technology. The centre mobilises what we call a 3I approach, and that is where we focus on Indigenous and survivor-centred approaches to inform our research and collaboration. All of our research fellows, our chief investigators and our PhD students, whom we're hiring from across the region, are engaged in Indigenous research methodology training on a quarterly basis, and we engage in collaboration as well with our Indo-Pacific research partners. We're also very much committed to interdisciplinary collaboration. Across our 13 chief investigators, we have economists, we have political scientists, we have lawyers, we have social workers, and many more. And it's really important for us to make sure that that interdisciplinary approach is core to all of the research that we engage in. And then finally, we are also deeply committed to an Indo-Pacific research and practitioner partnership approach to make sure that the approaches that are being promoted and researched and designed are scalable to eliminate violence against women across diverse legal, security, economic, health, and political systems across the region. And if I could just say that the choice of the banner for ARC, CVOR, which we call it, is very much meant to reflect what we see as the inspiration of the 3I approach. Molly Hunt, a Balangara Yolngu woman, created and designed our banner, and the inspiration was based on Australian First Nations songlines that speak about connections across country and continent, about how connections also operate across waters. The connection between Indigenous and other First Peoples via our waterways, including the ocean, and I think importantly in the context of what we're talking about today, to realise that these connections flow in all directions, human, more than human, and other entities together, and the shapes represent difference, yet still the need to maintain that connection. And so what's important to us in the creation of the centre and transforming an environment where we can really accentuate the research that's been done through the centre with our PhD students and our research fellows, our new practitioners that will emerge into this space to do this important work, is to create a regional network that translates knowledge, the knowledge of our partners, investigators and our partner organisations, to ensure that there is a new generation of violence against women researchers and practitioners engaged in interdisciplinary and Indigenous form approaches. And that's why we're so grateful today for the participation of eSafety and UNFPA, as well as DFAT and of course the Fiji government in assisting us with bringing together this event for you all today. Before I speak about the work that we're currently doing and address Mr. Theo's question, I'd like to just first ask everyone online and in the audience to engage in a quick activity on Menti, which you will see a little card in front of you, and you're more than welcome to join it now. And if you could just do a scan or enter in menti.com and then enter the code, and then we can commence. And I thought this would just be a really helpful activity for us all to reflect on what we think we know about our knowledge in this area of this big acronym TFGBV. Please note that by participating in this platform, your consent to response will be recorded, but it will be anonymous. And I've also provided there for your information the research ethics number that we've got in place to conduct the survey. So the first question is, what do you think is the most common form of technology-facilitated gender-based violence? And you can pick as many as you'd like, or one. Thank you so much for your contributions to that. And I will just let you know too that at the end of the survey, you yourselves can also download the results of this survey. So you'll be able to also see the way in which others are thinking about what is the definition of TFGBV and the most common forms. The next question, TFGBV is a problem in the Asia-Pacific region. Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? So we're all passionately committed to seeing this addressed. Preventing TFGBV is a challenge for policymakers. Wow, that was a strong endorsement there of a challenge for policymakers. Strongly agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. Thank you. And if anyone has answered disagree and is in the room, we really would value their views on this. It's really important to have a conversation about the different views that we have. Responding to TFGBV is a challenge for the police system. Strongly agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. And again, we welcome all perspectives in the Q&A. So I'm going to leave this final slide up here while I speak about the research that Professor Flynn and her research fellow, Dr. Quilty, have been doing to date in this area of CVOR technology. And we really would welcome, while you're listening, for you to place here what you think are the big priorities that need to be thought about in relation to TFGBV prevention and protection. If you don't yet at this point feel like you have ideas that you wish to give, you're more than welcome to reach out to us and let us know if you'd like to enter your ideas into this at a later date. And we are going to make sure that these reflections are included in our report for this event in December. So just briefly to answer Pio's question in relation to what CVOR has been doing in this research in this area. I first of all would like to really acknowledge the brilliant work and engagement of technology partners and regulators with whom CVOR is delighted to be engaging with, such as eSafety, as well as practitioners such as UNFPA in this space. They are at the forefront, as we've heard already, thinking about how to make sure that not just in research, but also in practice, to really make sure that this is a priority across the region. And it's a real honour for CVOR to be collaborating with such thought leaders in this space. We are really committed to making sure that these research partnerships that CVOR has can be facilitated across with our other university partnerships in the region, including the University of South Pacific and Thammasat here in Bangkok. And we're also really committed to making sure that at the centre of the research that we're doing with our partners, both industry as well as first-line responders and researchers, is that there is a community Indigenous-centred approach and to build relationships with those most affected by violence, to create and identify opportunities for community benefit and ensure their inclusion in governance and design. This relational approach is important for all minority groups, and it's one that CVOR is deeply committed to. To date, Professor Flynn has been dedicated to identifying the scope of TFGBV in the region, looking at the trends, the risk and the prevalence across 46 countries. What's been found in the research to date is that in the Asia-Pacific region, we have a mirroring of global trends, but there has been a marked increase in risk and prevalence in the region, in particular in the areas of digital dating and professional contexts, which I think comes back to what we were hearing earlier. If we're going to think about what the world looks like in 10 years' time and the way in which populations are going to engage in economic, research, political leadership opportunities, thinking about the way in which when they do and don't feel safe to engage in this technological space, it is of utmost paramount importance that we think about how to protect and to prevent. We're also seeing it rise in rural and regional areas, which we think is a really important area to note in the context where a lot of the discussion is about the gender-digital divide. This is occurring in these remote areas. We also need to be thinking as well about the gendered social problems that we've heard already, about the fact that women are more significantly affected by men, and the evidence here in this region bears that out. What we're also seeing is that current and former partners are primary perpetrators of TFGBV. And there's a lack of legal recognition or protection plans in place for TFGBV. A lot of the commonly perpetrated behaviours and tactics in the region are primarily online harassment, image-based sexual abuse, impersonation, surveillance through digital technologies, and coercive control. And the research shows that there's significant concerns about the fact that law enforcement training, police themselves have not been trained in how to recognise this as violence and give advice to survivors on how to capture behaviour. And there's even risk at times that those who come forward are blamed and shamed. There's an unclear understanding of TFGBV, as we saw in the diversity there around the responses to what we all define as TFGBV. All of those are acts of TFGBV. We hear a lot about inadequate legal responses, and it's really commendable here to hear from the ambassador and the minister about what they're doing in this space, and also to make sure that we're thinking as well about the fact that perpetrators themselves, and a lot of the studies, have not identified themselves being aware of the illegality of what they're engaging in. So what CVOR is really committed to is to thinking about how we can progress quantitative and qualitative research in this space. We're going to be launching a perpetration and bystander survey in 2025 across the Indo-Pacific, a number of countries, to understand male perpetration of TFGBV and bystander intervention practices. We're also really committed to understanding at a deeper qualitative level how frontline responders, tech providers, police and legal and DFC supports appreciate and understand the different types of TFGBV, the policy responses, the processes in place to be able to support them, support survivors. And then finally, we're really committed to understanding how young people between 18 and 13 appreciate the positive benefits of technology and what ways they think design could be done better, what access to information do they want, how do they see it's important to be able to across the digital gender divide and think about gender in the digital space. And we're delighted to be doing this research with the University of South Pacific. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah, for those insights and sharing that evidence, and also helping us engage with the Mentimeter to prompt some of our thoughts around these issues. I think you were spot on some of your points, particularly around the rural areas. We sometimes tend to forget about that, this issue of the lack of legal recognition, but very importantly, the law enforcement training and capacity building, and that takes consistent, deliberate leadership and investment in those areas, I think, to try and make the difference. So thank you for that and for everything the Centre's doing. Really appreciate it. Okay, folks, so we have about 15 minutes or so as an opportunity for you, the audience, to either pose some questions to our panelists or perhaps share some brief observations. I'd appreciate if everybody could try and keep it brief so that we can maximize participation. Interestingly, we saw some responses there around whether it's a challenge for policymakers or a challenge for police. Ideas coming up about an online ambulance, more awareness needed, innovative apps for support as well. So please, I'll turn the floor over to you to see what you would like to share with this group, reflections on what you've heard or otherwise. We are at the end of this session, but I want to just give each of you 30 seconds. Just a final thought you want to leave with all of our guests who are with us today before we all go our separate ways. Maybe I'll start with you, Ambassador.
I'll just say, first of all, if you are a survivor in this space, if you have experienced tech-facilitated GBV, or indeed you will experience it, you are not alone. It's not right. It's not acceptable. And I think that's a really important point because, again, my experience is so many people are just wearing this themselves. And I do think a point that you made about the way in which we can and should and need to use technology as part of the solution in addressing this. And I was just kind of thinking, I mean, that example of walking down the street is a personal example when my experience went, from maybe one person saying that to 6 million. And at the time, again, I just felt, I wish I could push a button and respond to every one of you in a way that I had 12 million responses coming and saying, you're amazing, what you're doing is incredible, keep going, and, you know, push back through having that technological response. So I do think there's a challenge with technology, but the solutions are very much there, and we need to keep working together to find them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Taranima?
So, yeah, I think in line with what Ambassador Copus-Campbell was saying, when in our work with CSOs, I'm so inspired always with the level really of how deeply people will engage with technical literature. We've actually built machine learning models to detect abuse in regional languages with CSOs, and they will all engage together because they collaboratively and they care so much about this problem. So I think for me, it's really important that all of us as survivors, as people of marginalized genders, feel empowered to use technology to advocate for our concerns and to be a part of the solution. Because not only is that helping us as individuals, it's actually, I think, going to lead to a much healthier digital society, the kind of society that we want to work towards, not the one that we have right now.
Thank you, and Sarah.
Thank you. I just want to sincerely thank again eSafety, UNFPA, DFAT, and our other partners, research partners across the region. We're really committed to making a long-term commitment to research in this area, and we certainly welcome engagements with all of you in relation to this area. And I just would like to say finally that it's really important that we're thinking about creating a safe community of togetherness in addressing this area, that we're also keeping at the forefront, as you said earlier, Pio, that this is also an area where it's about this continued pursuit of gender equality and equity.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. You know, I think it was that togetherness actually that helped spur a lot of what we saw 30 years ago in Beijing, and so much of the progress that we've been able to see across the globe in those 30 years. But sadly, things have not gone in the right direction. You know, there really is a very strong, pervasive pushback on the rights of women and girls across the globe. And, you know, for me, this is not an emerging threat. This is a threat that is here and now, and it is taking on sinister, darker aspects to it as time goes by. And I think that aspect of togetherness is really, really important. My message is that it's partnership. It is really all hands on deck. It is not the responsibility of only government. It takes everyone to help combat this. That piece around intersectionality is so important so that we leave nobody behind as we try and tackle this whole entire issue. And speaking of which, it's really important that men and boys are part of this. We always say we need to bring our men and boys along in the gender equality discussions, but they really do need to step up and speak up on these issues. And so we need to also create that space for men and boys and encourage those who take brave steps, often very much just in a simple community setting, and to kind of try and encourage that. Your piece really sat with me, Stephanie, about that normalization piece. If you walk past it, what are we doing? And I think we are all privileged in the sense that we have platform, we have voice, we are able to be part of these discussions and network among, you know, some fantastic minds and advocates over these last 3 days here in Bangkok. I think we need to continue to push on these issues to make sure that those in the influential and leadership positions step up to their own responsibilities, actually, and make sure that we're getting the kind of investments and progress needed. Because when that girl or that woman is free from violence, she's an unstoppable force, and she's empowered, she can pursue her education and live a life of dignity that she deserves. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to our organizers, but in particular, thank you to our amazing panelists for all the work that you do and for being with us this afternoon. A round of applause, please. Thank you. Take care, everybody.